Whether you're new to Melee in Path of Exile and kind of just want to see what it's capable of, or you're a tried and true veteran and you want the creme de la creme of what Melee has to offer, either way, you've come to the right place. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the best Melee build in Path of Exile, Dual Strike of Ambidexterity. Now, before I start explaining things, we actually have to cover a few things. What the heck is that?
Hello?
Listen up, punk! I'ma tell you what!
This is 1 mana left.
Better sit down, better keep your mouth shut!
And it's that time of the league
I'ma fold you out with a punch to the gut!
where I declare what will be the strongest overall endgame build for the new Path of Exile League.
Don't speak! I haven't hit my peak! I'm perfect second 6 feet deep in the concrete! We up next! Stay upset! Keep your head in check! Oh boy, you better watch your step!
No, we're not playing Molten Strike of the Zenith. That is absolutely going to be the strongest melee build. Come on, guys, a melee build. It's not actual melee. We're using projectiles. Projectiles, last time I checked, a projectile is not a melee hit. Melee, we're playing But seriously, if you want to actually play a super freaking omega strong build, go play Molten Strike of the Zenith. I don't know how that skill got buffed numerically. I don't know. It just makes sense to me. Regardless, what we're playing here is Dual Strike of Ambidexterity. So before I actually start explaining things, I want to make two things very clear. Number one, this is absolutely not a league starter. Now, the one and only reason you should league start this build is if you really want to. That's the only reason. I'm not going to say you can't do it, because you definitely can, but you really should want to do this. I highly recommend that you league start something else Duelist Slayer, even Bone Shatter. Just go Bone Shatter, guys. Level up through the campaign with Sunder, swap the Bone Shatter, bada bing, bada boom. Once you get some currency, then you roll into Dual Strike of Ambidexterity, because this is not a cheap build, especially this setup, but I have a cheaper setup, don't worry. Far less damage, obviously. Furthermore, number two, yes, there are other alternatives to this build. You don't have to play Slayer. In fact, Alkaiser, who's the melee god, has a Juggernaut version of this build, which is highly comparable. His build's a little more expensive. If you know what you're doing, you can definitely shave some points off, shave some currency off. But if you really want to invest to it, I actually would recommend that you go Juggernaut instead of Slayer, because the top end, like the top of the top end, Juggernaut is going to be better than Slayer. But if you just want to get your hands dirty with some good old melee action, this is an absolutely great choice. So let's dive into it. First of all, Dual Strike of Ambidexterity simply states that your main hand does a butt ton more damage, and your offhand is used basically as your attack speed of the skill. So obviously what we're going to do is use a very hard hitting main hand weapon, such as the Paradoxica, which states attacks with this weapon deal double damage. Sounds pretty good to me for a main hand. And then in the offhand, we're using just a really fast attacking weapon. In this case, it's a claw, specifically a Warlord claw, and then crit multi, and it's essentially double crit multi because of the Warlord mod. There's a hybrid, if you didn't know, percent fizz and global critical strike multiplier as a prefix. Normally, crit multi is just a suffix. So that's one idea. You don't have to run this setup. In fact, I have again, a much lower investment. I mean, like much lower investment setup here. Obviously, far less damage. Survivability is still pretty good, but this thing is way cheaper. So if you really want to get into Dual Strike as fast as possible, I recommend the bare minimum is this setup right here. I imagine this will be roughly 10 divines or so to get up and started. And then this highest investment one, I don't know, man. Like you can just, like I said, invest in this as much as you want. Go play the Juggernaut as well if you want like a super tanky, super high investment. Like you want Mage Blood upon like Watcher's Eye, like triple mod, everything. Then you probably want to go play Juggernaut. But you can invest as much money in any build, especially this one. Anyway, the passive tree is not really anything too special. I would say one of the biggest things between this league and previous leagues is the addition of this leech cluster right here for Slayer. This is actually gargantuan because it gives you 30% maximum, which is what you want when you're playing Slayer. You want maximum total life recovery per second from leech for 2 points. 2 single points, you get 30%, and then you get the leech mastery. Honestly, it's just way better. Like this wheel was buffed over here. This is the wheel that most people would take. It gives you 15%, 15%, and then 40%. But that's for 4 points, right? You have to go like this, right? 4 points, and then you get the mastery for 5 for instant leech versus 3 points over here. And if you see the difference here, so we're at 3,400 life leech per second. We take off these 3 points here. We go over here, put in the instant leech, and we are sitting at 3,800. So it's like, is it even that much of a difference? I mean, not really. That's pretty negligible. For 2 extra passive points, I don't think that's worth it. So for this wheel right here is absolutely gargantuan. Love it. Definitely take it. And it's right next to a bunch of stuff that you're taking anyway. Also, another new cluster, which I have no idea who the heck balanced this one. So this wheel right here, okay? It gives you chance to bleed, which by itself is irrelevant, basically. It gives you a little bit of crit chance, which is nice. Same thing here, chance to bleed, crit chance. Look at this node. 30 crit multi, 80% crit chance against bleeding enemies, which this gives you bleed chance, so they're going to be bleeding. And then the mastery gives you 80% crit chance as well. So these 4 points right here, literally 4 points, look at this per point, 6.3% damage per point. And we're talking about an Omega endgame tree. Like, look at these jewels. We have accuracy, double crit multi, life, every single jewel. We have watchers. This is like a pretty in-game setup. 4 points gives us 6.3% per point. And it's not a cluster jewel. It's just regular passive tree. Like, this node is absolutely bonkers. So if you skip this node, you're trolling. Do not skip this node, period. On top of that, if you've never played Melee Lane Path of Exile, I don't blame you if this is your first time. But this wheel right here is basically the only reason you would ever go dual wielding, because it gives right here Ambidexterity, 60% increased damage with the main hand, and then 30% increased attack speed with the offhand. This is an extremely strong node, obviously, for dual strike of Ambidexterity, as the name would imply. If you catch my drift there, look at that one right there. Pretty cool. And then the mastery here, damage while wielding 2 different weapon types. You have to wield 2 different weapon types for dual strike of Ambidexterity, so it all adds up. It's pretty good. On top of that, cluster jewels, it's basically the same exact node right here. Increased damage main hand, increased offhand attack speed. You can get 2 of them. I mean, I guess you can get as many as you want technically, but we have 2 of them. There are just so many ways to scale up the damage efficiently in this build. Lastly, another really big change to a build like this is the addition of blood magic. Now, if you didn't know, determination pretty much got gutted. A lot of builds are not going to run it anymore. Some builds you can definitely fit it in and it's fine, but you don't really want to run determination if you don't have to. So with the addition of blood magic, what this means is that we can reserve only a portion of our life, and it gives you, 10% more maximum life in general. It's really good. But if you reserve only a portion of it, you can then get access to petrified blood. So blood magic by itself now turns your mana reservation into HP reservation. So petrified blood by itself doesn't quite reserve to the threshold of 50%, which is what you need to be considered low life for petrified blood to actually come into effect. So in addition, we can run the auto exertion support with a war cry, in this case Ancestral Cry, which really helps with strike skills. And this puts us perfectly at the 50% reserved life threshold for petrified blood. Perfect. Mwah, 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 mwah. Beautiful. And then another rather large addition right next to blood magic here is the addition of rage passives on the tree. If you did not know, rage as a mechanic was completely overhauled. Now it gives you 1% more attack damage per rage point. And this one gives you 1 rage on hit, 2 rage on hit. And then the inherent rage loss starts 1 second later. Is actually a very powerful mechanic as well. Basically, think about new rage like this. If you start losing rage, you are probably going to lose all of your rage, if that makes sense. Like if you're ever in a scenario where your rage, you're not hitting something, frequently enough and it starts going down, you're probably going to lose all of it. You lose 10 rage per second and the cap is 30. So it takes 3 seconds to just deplete all of your rage. So having the inherent rage loss start 1 second later essentially just means you have 50% more uptime on your rage, if you want to think about it like that. So I think that's very, very, very powerful. And then you get 3 extra max rage here, and then the mastery says +7 to maximum rage, which means we're at a grand total of 43 rage, aka 43% more damage. And again, you can stack rage 2 times every single second. So 3, obviously we're stacking 6 rage per second. It does not take very long to get to this threshold. Now, I'm not going to say this POB is perfect. It's definitely not, but this absolutely will point you in the right direction if you know what you're doing. Here's the template. Again, I have a loadout here. Just go to the top right corner. Hey, these new loadouts, shout out Subtract them. A very good job, man. This is an awesome addition to Path of Building here. Go to the loadouts in the top right here. Click the lowest investment. It'll change the skills. It'll change the items. It'll change the config, and it'll change the passive tree all in one little go here. Again, I recommend that you do not play this build unless you have a little bit of currency to invest in the build. About 10 divines should get you started at a pretty good level. And one last time, if you want an alternative to Slayer, absolutely, you can go play the Juggernaut or the Berserker if you want to. I'm sure maybe you can do something crazy with Gladiator, maybe, probably not. I wouldn't recommend that, but I'll leave a link in the description below to Alkaiser's version of this build using the Juggernaut if you really want to see what a tankier, more heavy investment would be like. Anyway, I just want to share my excitement. I will almost guaranteed roll into this once I have a lot of currency to spend. I'm going to start with Earth Shatter, and then I'll transition into this probably a week down the line or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I appreciate it. Check out my stream at twitch.tv/WoolieGaming. I'll be streaming a butt ton of Path of Exile, so come check it out. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching.